Hey guys, so I ended up getting deep into a research rabbit hole about slower velocity training, and I want to share it with you. So first, I saw this post on Instagram that someone made about a meta-analysis that was done on slower velocities being far inferior compared to maximal velocities. So then I looked up the research paper. It was a meta-analysis done. So I started reading it, and there's a lot of assumptions made. There's a lot of other research papers cited. So I saw one sentence that stuck out to me that said how slower velocity training has reduced force production, power production, and strength, and isn't good enough to get you stronger, and that maximal velocities will get you stronger. So I was like, that's a misleading statement. Let me click into that study. So they cited the study, clicked into that, started reading it. Here's kind of what that study was saying. They had two protocols. One was a super slow protocol for 10 seconds concentric movement, 10 seconds eccentric. So that's 20 seconds per rep. And the thing was, they did this for 10 reps. So this was kind of a red flag to me, because I've heard of the super slow protocol, but I've never heard of it being done for 10 reps, because that's a lot of time per just one set. Well, 20 seconds per rep for 10, that's 200. So yeah, you're talking 3 minutes, 20 seconds to perform this set. I've just never heard of it going to 10 reps. They did that with 28% of their 1 rep max, which is probably accurate. Then they did a 3 sets of 10 protocol with 70% of 1 rep max. And they did this both on the squat and the bench press. Their experiment, what they did was they just put probes on the person's body, had force plates located and mounted on the walls and on the floor and on the barbell and all this, so they could measure velocities and weights. And so really they just did basic physics, right? I mean, they think that force equals mass times acceleration. Work, they had a product for work, for joules, all these measurements, just to show you that, there's so much less force when you use lighter loads and move them slowly. The problem with this is they're talking about force on an external level. I did not hear and read about any probe that was put into the muscles, okay, to find the tension and the force being produced in the muscle. So yeah, there's a difference between external forces and internal. I mean, I could have told you that if you go to the gym and watch somebody perform squats as fast as they can, that they're producing more force, external force, than somebody over here with half as much weight and doing it really slowly. Technically, on the outside looking in, they're not doing as much work. They're not putting in as much force. They're not going to do as many reps, which is true. That's true. But they're talking about external forces like this is a machine. They're talking about it like this is a robot here, and it's not. It's a human being with muscle fibers, and the forces inside the muscle fiber are not being measured in this study. To me, it was a huge red flag reading that they're just measuring the external forces. Like I said, I could have told you that. I could have told you that if you're talking about force production, mass times acceleration, then yeah, that side who used heavier loads and moved them as fast as they could is going to have more of that type of force. And if you're measuring power by the same type of measurement, then yeah, that's going to be your one that you're going to go to get more power. The problem is that's not the way muscles work. Based on the logic of these researchers, isometric contractions would not exist, because with force time equals mass times acceleration, you would have a mass like a 20-pound dumbbell, and you're holding it in a biceps curl, and you're isometrically contracting, but there's no acceleration. So you can't apply Newton's law to the human body. That's taking it out of context. Newton's law wasn't built for the human body. It was built for forces and two separate objects. It's not the human body. So that's a huge flaw in this study, taking Newton's second law out of context. As I was making this video this morning, I later went on to Instagram and found that one of my exercise science professors from college had posted a post saying that slow speed training is detrimental to muscle hypertrophy. So now I have to add that into this video so that we can get a full picture of the answer to this question. And there was 2 research studies that he cited to support that. So here's the first study. I just read through it. Basically, they had 3 groups. One group performed a slower protocol. The other group performed a traditional protocol with heavier weight. And then another group performed an endurance higher rep protocol, also with a normal rep speed. So 3 different groups, and they also had a control group. I'm going to post it right here so you can look and see the exact protocol. They also did this 3 times a week with leg press, squat, and quad extension, and they did 3 sets of each. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say that that's too much. So maybe a lot of people won't agree with that, but I would say that that's a little too much training. And they say that they always say all the sets are taken to failure. So, you know, it is what it is. That's how they conducted it. But what they found was there were increases in muscle fiber types of all the muscle fiber types for all groups, increases in cross-sectional area. There was a greater increase in cross-sectional area for the group that used heavier loads. But they all increased, and they said that it was not statistically significant, the differences. So once they got to their conclusion, though, they did say that, you know, heavier loads and faster rep speeds was better, but it doesn't mean that going slower was detrimental. I think there was an issue with the way they measured the growth, and obviously, like I just said, they did too much. You know, if people actually trained slower, doing 6 to 10 reps the way they prescribed, 3 sets each for all those exercises, that's too much to recover from for me. So that could be a confounding issue as to why they got the results that they got. Anyway, I want to just show that this study does not say that it'll be detrimental to use lighter loads or to move slower. At the end of the day, Henneman's size principle is going to play out the same. So I don't understand why rep speed is being researched as if it's going to make that big of a difference when Henneman's size principle is going to play out. It's going to work its way through the lighter, smaller motor units and work its way up to the heavier ones. The second study used to suggest that training slower is going to be detrimental to your hypertrophy gains was this study here, conducted by Brad Schoenfeld. And it's in a meta-analysis. I think that's interesting. It's always a meta-analysis with Brad Schoenfeld. I mean, this guy is on it. He always on the meta-analysis train. And what I love about his meta-analysis is there's this chart here that shows all the research studies that are involved. So you can quickly scan this chart and kind of tells you what the results are going to be for the analysis before he even does it. So you can see that there's no significant differences in any of these. Only one of these studies does find a difference. But again, vast majority, there is no difference. So he goes into the analysis, he finds his inclusion criteria, gets down to the few studies that he's going to keep, and then we'll get into what he finds here in the discussion and then the conclusion. This study here discussed in the discussion found that there was a difference in the EMG activity between the muscles, between repping it slow or fast. I'm not sure that EMG really has a lot of weight with training anymore. I think we're moving away from that in terms of the research. Again, this doesn't mean that the fibers weren't recruited. This doesn't mean they weren't stimulated or trained for growth. And while we're on that topic, just because you don't see growth doesn't mean they weren't stimulated to grow. It just means the growth wasn't produced. So if there's not enough recovery between sessions or between the time they began the training protocol versus at the end, if there wasn't enough recovery inside of their protocol, then there's not going to be enough time for the body to repair itself and to adapt and grow on top of that. So you're not going to get as good of changes if you're doing too much training. I found it interesting that in their discussion, they also cited the previous study that you and I just went over, where they found that there wasn't that big of a difference. There wasn't a statistical difference, but they said, well, maybe those higher threshold motor units just weren't stimulated. So it's just a hypothesis. They're not actually proving this. They're just saying that might be the case based on what they've found. But then again, each one of these studies says, we're the first to ever analyze all of this. So if you're the first one to analyze this stuff, then why do you think why that those muscle fibers wouldn't be recruited? Like, I don't know where they get that if this is the first time they've studied it. So no, I don't think it's that they're not getting recruited. I think possibly the researchers don't know how to take someone to true failure when they're using a slower protocol. It's very uncomfortable. It's very difficult. And if you as a researcher don't push your subjects through that difficult and uncomfortable period, they're going to be stopping short. So yeah, if you stop short, you're going to get less stimulation and thereby less results, and especially if you're overtraining. And once again, here's their conclusion. So it's a very short conclusion. They found that no, all the different protocols for rep speed equate to the same results, and the only thing was they're just hesitant to really discuss 10 seconds repetitions. So repetitions that take like 10 seconds or longer, that's just the unknown for them. They say there's not that many studies on it, and that they're not sure about the results with that. So that's understandable, but at least they're being honest in that repetitions under 10 seconds between concentric and eccentric, it's going to be about the same. So for me, I would suggest that it's going to be the same all the way through. And in fact, you could have a study where you don't move the weight at all. You just perform an isometric contraction and hold that. And as you hold that, your fatigue is increasing, your muscle motor unit recruitment is increasing until the fatigue overtakes you, until all the motor units that are possible to recruit are firing and you're no longer able to isometrically hold the weight. So that would be hitting failure, that would be recruiting everything. So I'm not sure why these researchers are forgetting Henneman's size principle. We've known this since the 50s. So it's important that we do research, but it's also important that we build that upon what we know to be true, the fundamentals. If we forget those and go off on these, stray paths of research, are we really progressing as a community and as science and exercise science? Hopefully you guys learned something from this. If you did, please share it. Please like the video, comment, subscribe. What I took away from all of this is that no, there's really no difference in performing a slower repetition. If you take it to failure, you took it to failure. I mean, if you stop short, then you don't get as much, results. You're not getting as much stimulation if you stop short. So it's important to train to failure. It's important to then do amount of volume that you can recover and adapt to. And if you're not seeing adaptations, then you're probably not adapting. I mean, untrained women training 3 times a week, 3 big leg exercises, 3 sets each to failure, how are they supposed to recover from that? Okay, they're not on drugs, they're natural. So I know people train a lot more than that, whatever, but that doesn't mean that they're getting better results doing more. If they would try implementing training where they do less training, but train to failure, they could be seeing better results. Anyway, hopefully you guys learned something from this.